Good afternoon. The Senate will come to order. Secretary will call the roll.
Senator Buck. Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Daley. Senator Dunyate. Senator Dondera-Loop. Senator Flores. Senator Goycochea. Senator Hammond. Senator Hansen. Senator Harris. Senator Krasner. Senator Lang. Senator Neal. Senator Wynn. Senator Orenshaw. Senator Pizzina. Senator Scheibel. Senator Seavers-Gansert. Senator Spearman. Senator Stone. Senator Titus.
Let the record show that there are 21 senators present. Please stand for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. A prayer will be given to us by Pastor Brian Lucas of Pax Christian Church in Gardnerville.
Gracious God in heaven, we honor you today with all that we do. May your face shine upon this nation and your blessing be upon our state of Nevada. In this Senate, grant wisdom to those leading us. May the men and women gathered here be filled with grace, love, compassion, and patience for one another. Bring prosperity to our state and dignity to our people. We ask your spirit, power, insight, and mercy fill this place and make these meetings fruitful. In your glorious name we pray today. Amen.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Order of business number 3. By previous order of the Senate, the reading of the journal is dispensed with, and the President pro tempore and the Secretary are authorized to make the necessary corrections and additions. Order of business number 4, reports of committee.
Madam President pro tempore, your Committee on Commerce and Labor, to which was referred Senate Bill number 330, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation do pass. Signed, Senator Pat Spearman, Chair. Madam President pro tempore, your Committee on Education, to which was referred Senate Bill number 71, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation amend and do pass as amended. Signed, Senator Roberta Lang, Chair. Madam President pro tempore, your Committee on Government Affairs, to which were referred Senate Bills numbers 165, 210, 319, and 331, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation do pass. Signed, Senator Edgar Flores, Chair. Madam President pro tempore, your Committee on Health and Human Services, to which was referred Senate Bill number 260, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation do pass. Signed, Senator Fabian Dunyate, Chair. Madam President pro tempore, your Committee on Health and Human Services, to which was referred Senate Bill number 44, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation amend and do pass as amended. Signed, Senator Fabian Dunyate, Chair. Madam President pro tempore, your Committee on Judiciary, to which were referred Senate Bills numbers 103, 129, 153, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation do pass. Signed, Senator Melanie Scheibel, Chair. Madam President pro tempore, your Committee on Judiciary, to which was referred Senate Bill number 34, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation amend and do pass as amended. Signed, Senator Melanie Scheibel, Chair. Madam President pro tempore, your Committee on Natural Resources, to which were referred Senate Bills numbers 76 and 77, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation amend and do pass as amended. Signed, Senator Julie Pizzina, Chair. Madam President pro tempore, your Committee on Revenue and Economic Development, to which was referred Senate Bill number 95, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation do pass. Signed, Senator Dina Neal, Chair. End of reports.
Thank you. Order of business number 8, waivers and exemptions.
Notice of exemption, April 10th, 2023. The Fiscal Analysis Division, pursuant to Joint Standing Rule 14.6, has determined the eligibility for exemption of Senate Bills numbers 65, 221, 233, and 423. Signed, Wayne Thorley, Fiscal Analysis Division. End of waivers and exemptions.
Thank you. Order of business number 9, motion, resolutions, and notices. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President pro tempore. I move to suspend Senate Standing Rule number 50 and withdraw Senate Bill number 448 from the Committee on Judiciary and re-refer the bill to the Committee on Finance. That bill reallocates administrative assessment revenues and should be properly heard in finance as it impacts our budget decisions.
You've heard the motion. Are there any objections? All those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I move to take Senate Bill number 223 from its spot on the general file and place it on the Secretary's desk for the purposes of amendment.
Thank you. Senator Cannizzaro has moved to take Senate Bill number 2 through 3 from the general file and put it on the Secretary's desk. You've heard the motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the motion carries. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I move that we take Senate Bill 39 from its place on general file and move it to general file for the next legislative day for the purpose of answering some outstanding questions.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. Senator Cannizzaro has moved to take Senate Bill 39 from the general file and put it on the Secretary's desk. All in favor, say aye. I'm sorry. Put it on the general file. I'm reading and can't read. Put it on the general file for the next legislative day. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And the motion carries. Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I move that the news media personnel noted on the list at each senator's desk be accepted and accredited as members of the press and that they be allowed to use the appropriate media facilities in the legislative building.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Aye. And the motion carries.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 2, introduced by Senators Lang, et cetera, and Assemblyman Wynn, declares April 2023 as Financial Literacy Month. End of resolution.
Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I move that we adopt Senate Concurrent Resolution number 2.
Thank you, Senator Lang. So can you, Senator Lang, do you any amendments from the floor? No amendments. Any other comments from the floor? If not, the Secretary will open the roll. I am here today. I am here today. So all those in favor, aye. Opposed? And the motion carries.
Senate Joint Resolution 2, introduced by Senator Hansen, urges Congress to require the United States Board on Geographic Names to consider renaming the Sheldon National Wildlife Refuge as E.R. Sands National Wildlife Refuge. End of resolution.
Senator Lang. Senator Cannizzaro.
We need a brief 1-minute recess, Madam President Pro Tempore.
We will be in recess. Senate will come back to order. We are now on Senate Joint Resolution 2. Are there any remarks from the floor? Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we have a motion to adopt SJR 2.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, aye. Now, floor, any remarks from the floor?
We're going to get this dialed in well. This is a practice round, apparently. So, Senate Joint Resolution number 2 urges the United States Congress to require the U.S. Board on Geographic Names to consider renaming the Sheldon National Wildlife Refuge as the E.R. Sands National Wildlife Refuge. The resolution recognizes a significant contribution of Edward R. Sands, who was an employee of the Bureau of Biological Survey of the U.S. Department of Ag in Reno, Nevada, who was responsible for the establishment of the range. Real quick, I do want to give a little plug for this guy. The reason this even came up, while studying the whole issue around sage grouse, I discovered that in about 1915, when Mr. Sands came to the state of Nevada, the antelope populations here were about 1,500 and declining. And Mr. Sands made a very aggressive effort to try to get a bunch of different people together to create what we now know today as an antelope refuge to protect the remnant populations that existed in Nevada. He was successful in that after almost 20 years of effort. He got the Audubon Society involved, Boone and Crockett involved, and when the antelope refuge was finally came to fruition, it was named after a man who actually had never been in Nevada, named Mr. Charles Sheldon. Nothing against Mr. Sheldon. He was an exceptionally important person in that whole process. But after doing all the homework on it, Mr. Sands is one of those kind of unspoken people that helped the original Nevada conservation movement, if you will. Because of his efforts today, we have over 25,000 antelope and growing in the state to a point where we actually have a very substantial huntable population. There's now over 1 million of them in the West because of the efforts of people like Mr. Edward R. Sands. So after doing the homework on it, this is one of those people that after 30 years of hard work, nobody knows about. But in fact, because of his effort, we now have the antelope populations we do here today, as well as the antelope refuge. So that's why I brought this forward. I mean, all we're going to do is ask him to name something. So thank you, Madam Vice President, Madam President Pro Tem, for this indulgence.
Be careful, whatever it is floating around the room. Are there any further remarks? Hearing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Is there anyone who wishes to change his or her vote? Thank you. Then Senate Joint Resolution number 2 has received the constitutional majority and declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Joint Resolution 3, introduced by Natural Resources, urges the United States Bureau of Reclamation to consider certain actions, alternatives, and measures for the protection and management of the Colorado River. End of resolution.
Are there any amendments?
There are none.
Senator Scheibel.
I move to adopt Senate Joint Resolution 3.
You've heard the motion. Are there any objections? Remarks from the floor.
Senate Joint Resolution 3 urges the United States Bureau of Reclamation to consider certain actions, alternatives, and measures for the protection and management of the Colorado River, including the pursuit of a collaboration-based framework to address the structural deficit in the Colorado River, the inclusion of mechanisms to account for evaporation and system losses, the amendment of existing federal regulations to prohibit the inefficient delivery, application, or use of water to limit unnecessary losses on the Colorado River, and consideration of the consensus-based modeling alternative submitted by Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming in the supplemental environmental impact statement process.
Thank you. Are there further remarks? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Senator Hammond. Does anyone wish to change his or her vote? Thank you. The joint resolution, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Joint Resolution 5, introduced by Senators Scheibel, etc., urges Congress to expand the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children to cover the purchase of menstrual products. End of resolution.
Are there any amendments to the joint resolution as a whole? Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to adopt SJR 5.
You've heard the motion. Are there any objections? Are there any remarks from the floor?
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Joint Resolution 5 urges the United States Congress to expand the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children to cover the purchase of menstrual products.
Thank you. Are there further remarks from the floor? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Is there anyone who wishes to change his or her vote? The joint resolution, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Joint Resolution 7 of the 81st session, introduced by Senator Dondero Loop and Assemblyman Roberts, proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to remove the constitutional provisions governing the election and duties of the Board of Regents of the State University and to authorize the legislature to provide by statute for the governance of the State University and for auditing of public institutions of higher education in this state. End of resolution.
Are there any amendments to the joint resolution as a whole?
There are none.
Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I move to adopt Senate Joint Resolution number 7.
You've heard the motion. Are there any further remarks?
Yes, Senate Joint Resolution 7 of the 81st session proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to remove the constitutional provisions governing the Board of Regents of the University of Nevada. The legislature shall provide by law for the governance of the university and the establishment of its various departments. In addition, the resolution stipulates the proceeds of public lands donated for the support of the institution shall be invested by the state of Nevada as required by law. This resolution was approved by the 81st session of the legislature in 2021, and if approved in identical form during the 2023 legislative session, the proposal will be submitted to the voters for final approval or disapproval.
Thank you. Are there any further remarks? Seeing none, the Secretary will open the roll. Is there anyone who wishes to change his or her vote? The Secretary will close the roll. Senate Joint Resolution number 5 has received a constitutional 20 yea and 1 nay. Having received a constitutional majority, it is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senator Wynne has approved the addition of Senators Hansen, Harris, and Orenshaw as co-sponsors of Senate Bill 242. Senator Scheibel has approved the addition of Senator Buck as a primary sponsor of Senate Bill 352. Senator Scheibel has approved the addition of Senator Sievers-Gansert as a co-sponsor of Senate Bill 352. Senator Scheibel has approved the addition of Senator Sievers-Gansert as co-sponsor of Senate Bill 389. Senator Sievers-Gansert has approved the addition of Senator Buck as a co-sponsor of Senate Bill 97. That concludes Order of Business 9.
Thank you. Order of Business number 12, second reading.
Senate Bill 8, introduced by Government Affairs, revises provisions relating to juvenile justice. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1 and to Section 1.
Any amendments to the reading, to the amendment, to the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bill number 8, Senate Bill number 8 is ordered to the general file.
Senate Bill 16, introduced by Government Affairs, revises various provisions of the Charter of Carson City, the people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Senate Bill 16 is ordered to the general file.
Senate Bill 18, introduced by Government Affairs, revises provisions governing required meetings of planning commissions in certain counties. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Thank you. Then Senate Bill 18 is ordered to the general file.
Senate Bill 19, introduced by Government Affairs, revises provisions relating to local governments. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Then Senate Bill number 19 is ordered to the general file.
Senate Bill 25, introduced by Government Affairs, implements process for long-term planning for state office space. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Then Senate Bill number 25 is ordered to general file.
Senate Bill 26, introduced by Government Affairs, revises provisions relating to public works. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Senate Bill 25 is ordered to general file.
Senate Bill 29, introduced by Revenue and Economic Development, revises provisions related to refunds of overpayment of taxes. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Senate Bill 29 is ordered to the general file.
Senate Bill 67, introduced by Judiciary, revises the definition of the term sexual offense for the purpose of certain provisions relating to parole. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Then Senate Bill 67 is ordered to general file.
Senate Bill 80, introduced by Education, revises provisions relating to the prevention and treatment of injuries to the head. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Senate Bill 80 is ordered to general file.
Senate Bill 110, introduced by Senators Goycochea, Buck, and Stone, and Assemblyman Gurr, revises provisions governing the operation of vehicles on certain highways in the state of Nevada. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Senate Bill 110 is ordered to general file.
Senate Bill 131, introduced by Senators Canizaro, et cetera, and Assemblywoman Anderson, et cetera, revises provisions relating to reproductive health care. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The Senate Bill 131 is ordered to general file.
Senate Bill 177, introduced by Senators Dondero Loop, et cetera, and Assemblywoman Thomas, imposes requirements governing Medicaid coverage of certain antipsychotic and anticonvulsant drugs. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Then Senate Bill 177 is ordered to general file.
Senate Bill 181, introduced by Senators Pizzina, Hammond, Stone, Krasner, Flores, Harris, and Lang, revises provisions relating to economic development. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The Senate Bill 181 is ordered to general file.
Senate Bill 182, introduced by Senators Dondero Loop, Spearman, Doñate, and Lang, and Assemblyman Yeager, revises provisions governing motor vehicles. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The Senate Bill 182 is ordered to general file.
Senate Bill 221, introduced by Senators Doñate and Stone, revises provisions relating to Medicaid. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in the Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Then Senate Bill 221 is ordered to general file. Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you very much. Madam President Pro Tempore, I would like to move to take Senate Bill 221 from the second reading and re-refer it to the Committee on Finance.
Thank you. Senator Dondero Loop has moved to re-refer Senate Bill 221 to the Committee on Finance. Are there any objections? If not, so ordered.
Senate Bill 250, introduced by Senators Orenshaw, Wynn, and Spearman, revises provisions relating to catalytic converters. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows, Section 1 and to Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Then Senate Bill 250 is ordered to general file.
That concludes Order of Business 12.
Order of Business 13, general file.
Senate Bill 214, introduced by Government Affairs, revises provisions relating to governmental administration. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. Section 18, this act becomes effective on July 1, 2023. End of bill.
Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem. Madam President Pro Tem. Senate Bill 214 relates to elimination of certain commissions, committees, and councils. Senate Bill 214 eliminates the Advisory Committee to the Juvenile Justice Oversight Commission and the Advisory Council of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. The bill also eliminates the Commission of Educational Technology and instead requires the Nevada's Department of Education to establish a plan for the use of education technology in public schools. The bill eliminates both the requirement for the Department of Education to establish the competency-based education network and the authority for the Nevada System of Higher Education to establish a committee on anatomical dissection. Finally, the bill removes the authority of the Advisory Council on the State Program for Wellness and Prevention of Chronic Disease to appoint an advisory group to study the delivery of health care through patient-centered medical homes. Order of Business 16, Madam
Order of Business
President
16.
Pro Tem. So thank you. So many folks have heard me vehemently protest new commissions and committees. So this bill, I was very excited to see that it actually eliminates some of the commissions that are out there. So please support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further remarks from the floor? The Secretary, open the roll. Is there anyone who wishes to change his or her vote? Secretary will close the roll. The bill, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
Senate Bill 440, introduced by Senator Cannizzaro, makes appropriations requiring certain one-time payments and salary increases for state officers and employees. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1.
Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. Section 12, this act becomes effective upon passage and approval. End of bill.
Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I stand in support of Senate Bill 440, and so that the body is aware of what exactly it is that Senate Bill 440 does. This bill, as amended, makes general fund appropriations totaling $26.2 million and highway fund appropriations totaling $1.5 million in fiscal year 2023, so that is this fiscal year, to fund salary increases for state officers and employees of 2%, commencing on April 1st, 2023, and ending on June 30th, 2023. And it also includes retroactive one-time payments and salary increases to certain personnel represented by bargaining units established in Nevada Revised Statutes 288.515 as provided. Of the amounts appropriated from the state general fund, not more than $3.6 million may be allocated and dispersed to the Nevada System of Higher Education. This act becomes effective upon passage and approval. More importantly, Madam President Pro Tempore, I believe that this particular bill is important because, as many of us who certainly sit on the finance committees, and I'm sure if you've talked to anybody from any state agency, you have heard that in Nevada we have a significant vacancy rate among state agencies, and we also have a history of underpaying our state employees. In fact, according to a salary survey conducted by the Division of Human Resource Management in fiscal year 2022, the state of Nevada on average pays its employees 30% less than local governments and the private sector. That has resulted in a vacancy rate that on average is about 23%. And when we look at certain other departments, especially in public safety, that can be even higher than that 23%. To me, that's something that has reached a level that is unacceptable and that we have to address. And so Senate Bill 440, like other bills that we have voted on in this chamber and that are currently being considered by many of our committees, are an attempt to invest in our state workforce. Cost of living adjustments, in fact, have lagged behind inflation for state employees by approximately 31% since 1979. And I would just ask everyone in this body to sort of think about that and let that sit in your brain of 31% behind inflation since 1979. This is a persistent problem. We have an ability to correct that, and this is sort of one step in that direction. What this bill does is that there are several agreements, and I'll talk first about the agreements and then a little bit more on the 2% cost of living adjustments. So the two agreements represent, one, an agreement, a collective bargaining agreement, which is the law in the state of Nevada. State workers have the right to collectively bargain, to organize, to form a unit, and then to bargain with the state for conditions of employment and for pay. Those are rights that they have, and if they follow the law, those rights, we have an obligation as a body. This state has an obligation under the law to make sure that we're living up to those agreements. Otherwise, we are saying that that particular portion of the Nevada revised statutes, whether we agree with it or not, is something that we're just not willing to enforce, that is void. And if that is the case for that portion in NRS 288, then it is also true and could be true of any portion of the Nevada revised statutes. And frankly, what this body does is enact laws knowing that they are going to be enacted and fulfilled. So when we have a unit like the Nevada Police Union, which represents Category 1 peace officers, who went in and negotiated with the state for a 1% COLA, for longevity bonuses, and for educational attainment purposes, for them to get that additional incentive. And we're talking about Category 1 officers that help to keep our roads safe. These are people who work in public safety. They have immense vacancy rates. They went and negotiated for this. That contract ultimately went to arbitration, and an arbitrator, which we hear time and time again, we should not have recourse in civil litigation for agreements that are entered into by the state, that we should believe in things like the arbitration process or in mediation, and that those are reasonable ways for us to resolve disputes that exist, and that's a reasonable way for us to enforce provisions of the Nevada revised statutes. What happened at arbitration was this contract was approved. It was found in favor of the Nevada Police Union for those Category 1 officers. That contract was then approved through yet another governmental process from this state for the Board of Examiners to approve that contract back in March of 2022. What cannot happen in 2022 is for us to fund it because we are not in session. So the legislature cannot appropriate funds for that purpose when we're not in session. But those officers deserve that increase, not only because they are entitled to it under the law, but because they went through the process, a process that we have designed to ensure that the state is bargaining in good faith, and we owe it to them, not only for that reason, but simply because of the job that they do, that we owe it to them to provide that. Additionally, there's another agreement for several AFSCME units. These units are labor, maintenance, custodial, and institutional employees, including for our penal and corrections institutions that are not responsible for the security of those buildings. So these are folks who are working in our corrections departments. These are professional employees who provide health care, including physical therapists and other employees in the health and medical field. Employees who are not professionals, who also provide health care and personal care, including those who provide care for children. So when the state says we care about families, we care about children, we care about health care, and we're going to provide that, these are the employees who help to do that. And also a unit of Category 3 police officers that work here in this state. Same situation. They had a contract, they organized under the law, they are entitled to that. They went to arbitration, they wanted arbitration. The Board of Examiners then approved that contract for these employees. To me, to say, well, we just don't really have to fund it if we don't feel like it, is not making good on our promises. It is not investing in our state law enforcement. It is not standing up for those folks who are coming in here every single day and making this state run. So I would urge my colleagues' support. Additionally, this bill provides a 2% COLA increase for our state employees, including judicial, including our legislative employees, the folks who we rely on each and every day to make sure that we can do the jobs that we do in this building and so that this state functions. And if you're asking yourself why we should care so much about state employees, think about your constituents and when they may call on you I can't get through to the DMV. I'm having some trouble getting some verification for Medicaid. I need someone to help me because of fill in the blank. These are the people that are providing those services. These are your touch point with your constituents. This is how we are interacting with the people who have sent us here and who have placed their faith in us. If we don't believe in the people who are providing those services, then it is very hard for us to say that we can provide much for our constituents. For me, it is not okay for us to continue to hear about these vacancy rates, about the underpayment of state employees, continue to ask them to do the job of 2, 3, 4, sometimes 6 or 7 people, to have understaffing in our state law enforcement that provides a security risk and a safety risk for our citizens, and not make decisions that, even if you disagree with the law as it currently exists, are consistent with making good on that promise and investing in those employees. So I would urge my colleagues' support for this bill. The only other thing I'm going to mention, because I anticipate there may be some discussion about how much this is all going to cost, is that there's been a lot of work done to look at many proposals that are coming before this body that we have already approved in the form of retention bonuses, and that we are looking at in this bill, and that we will look at in other pieces of legislation and throughout the budgeting process. This is something that we are owed to these employees, at the very least, the collective bargaining pieces, because that is money that they should already have in their pockets. But they are not, because of a technicality of us not being in session. We should make good on that promise first and foremost before we consider anything else. And a 2% COLA in this fiscal year, with money that is left in this fiscal year, is absolutely something that we can afford and is appropriate. And we should continue to have those discussions, but this is not the bill that is the bill that we should say we're not going to support because we don't believe in a particular law, and so somehow we can't afford it. That is just not true. There have been a lot of discussions in the Finance Committee to support this as a fiscal decision, and from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, and I think from a responsibility to those officers and those employees. So I would strongly urge my colleagues' support of Senate Bill 440.
Thank you. Senator Severs-Gansert.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 440. The purpose of the state government is to serve the citizens of the state. We need to fund education, K-12, and higher ed. We need to make policy decisions to sustain and support the business sector that employs hundreds of thousands of Nevadans through businesses small and large. We need to make sure our communities are safe. We need to support our most vulnerable through health and human services and through safety net programs. We count on our state employees for all of these purposes and more. We too care about our employees. We are grateful to them and look for opportunities to support them. We recognize that COVID, with the closure of businesses and the state's pivot to remote work, impacted all of our employees. We recognize that state pay has fallen behind and we face record vacancy rates across positions, with public safety being one of the hardest hit. This governor, this legislative body, are responsible for making policy and budget decisions to support the many purposes the state government has, and are responsible to treat all of our employees fairly and equally. The state's budget must balance what we may want to do with what we need to do today, with an eye toward the future. The comprehensive budget we must approve must serve the citizens of the state, support our hardworking public employees, be sustainable today and into the future, and include savings to make sure we can continue to serve Nevadans when we face our next economic downturn. The proposal we have before us includes retroactive raises of 1% and 3% for certain groups of employees that are not enforceable without legislative appropriation, and an additional 2% raises across employee groups, all employee groups, beyond the governor's recommendations. The governor's budget, or the executive budget, includes 8% and 10% raises in fiscal year 24, which may be historic highs, and an additional 4% in fiscal year 25 to provide substantial raises while also providing parity among state workers. Again, the executive budget provides substantial pay increases and restores parity to all employees. And the governor's budget adds one-shot retention incentives, with a portion of those already enacted as of January 1st of this year. When you add the proposed raises in SB 440 to the governor's proposed raises, some employees will see 14% raises starting April 1st of this year, and others will have 18% retroactive raises.
The result is that we will have unsustainable pay increases and a doubling of the pay differences between certain types of employees. In the money committees now, we're also contemplating even more additions beyond what's on the table today. So again, we need to balance the budget, and we're looking at executive branch proposed raises, these raises, and also additional things that we've been talking about in the money committees. I know I've talked about making sure the raises are sustainable, and here's why. In 2008, 2009, 2010, and 2011, we faced budget cuts. And for those of us who were here, several of us were here, it was painful. Most of those cuts were to health and human services, particularly mental health services. Education, higher ed had a one-third cut to their budget, and we had ongoing furloughs for public employees. In 2007, just before that, we increased pay. So we increased pay, and then we had to roll everything back. While that may seem like ancient history to many of you, remember, we just had to implement cuts and furloughs in 2020. Given the closure of our state's businesses due to COVID. So we just did this again. Nevada is not immune to economic downturns. Rather, historically, it has been hit harder than any other states. With a less diversified economy, in December of 2010, we led the U.S. with the highest rates of unemployment, foreclosures, and bankruptcies. The past needs to inform us today and in the future. Before closing, I also want to make another point about the collective bargaining agreements. NRS 288.5602B states, if a provision of a collective bargaining agreement requires an act of the legislator to be given effect, the provision becomes effective, if at all, again, if at all, on the date on which the act of the legislature becomes effective. And when we were having the hearing the other day, I emailed our chief legal counsel, Brian Fernley, to follow up on that. What does that mean? And I have a memo that I would like inserted into the record from our chief legal counsel, part of which what it says is, the statutes governing collective bargaining agreements between the state and the employees of the executive department of that government recognize the necessity of enacting a law, making an appropriation to fund the provisions of such a collective bargaining agreements. NRS 288.5051C requires a collective bargaining agreement to include a non-appropriation clause that provides that any provision of the collective bargaining agreement which requires the legislature to appropriate money is effective only to the extent of legislative appropriation. Further, in the absence of the enactment of such an appropriation, no action could be brought to enforce those provisions of the agreement. The proposed retroactive raises based on collective bargaining agreements dating back to raises to 2021 cannot be enforced without appropriations of the legislature. Each of those agreements include non-appropriation clauses as required by the state. We believe that while those retroactive raises and new 2% raises sound appealing, they do sound appealing, and we want to support our employees, they are not sustainable, especially with the other pay raises and different changes that we may make to state compensation. They are not sustainable, and they increase the inequity of pay for public employees, and will lead to a fiscal cliff during the next economic downturn. We appreciate our public employees and support the substantial and sustainable raises as proposed in the executive budget, and the one-shot retention bonuses that have already been partially enacted. These reflect our appreciation for the past and ongoing work for our public employees. But today we must be fiscally responsible. We must balance our budget, and therefore we must oppose Senate Bill 440. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks from the floor? The Secretary will open the roll. Is there anyone who wishes to change his or her vote? Secretary will close the roll. The bill, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed and ordered to the Assembly.
That concludes our Business 13 and the business of the desk for this legislative day.
Thank you. Order Business 16, remarks from the floor and introduction of guests. Senator Cannizzaro. Senator Lang.
We'll try that again. Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I'm honored today to introduce our guests who are here with us to celebrate April 2023 as Financial Literacy Month. Will my guests please stand? In 2015, Nevada Youth Legislator Evan Gong reached out to a state senator, former Senator Joyce Woodhouse, asking to find a way to improve what was being offered to students in preparing them for financial challenges as they leave high school and move to college or world of work, excuse me. In ensuring legislative sessions, they worked with education experts and business leaders to craft legislation that brought forth the curriculum, experiences, and opportunities that accomplishes just that. Evan went on to study and graduate from UC Berkeley with a double majors in political economics and German. He works in San Francisco as in international relations, a true Nevada success story. With me today are Mr. Ray Specht, who is chairman of the Advisory Council for Financial Literacy, right here, as well as Janie Malorny, who is the education lead for the Department of Education and fine-tunes the financial literacy program every day, as well as many of our other responsibilities in the department. And one of the most important aspects of financial literacy work has been the partnerships developed from the business community, especially our credit union and banking friends, as they bring their expertise to the table for our students and teachers. Representing today is Mr. John Haduko, Vice President of Business Development of the Greater Nevada Credit Union. Thank you so much for all you do, and we have proclamations for you today, and I'm going to hand those out as you make them feel welcome. Thank you.
Senator Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. Today, you will probably have seen, and I'm not sure if they're in this chamber today, but if there are any members of the Chamber of Cannabis, I'd ask you to rise. The Chamber of Cannabis is Nevada's largest and most diverse business trade organization, comprised of 62 businesses and over 400 industry professionals. The Chamber creates a more conscientious, inclusive, and thriving industry by moving commerce forward, restoring justice, and positively impacting our community. Since its founding in 2020, the Chamber has accomplished this by advocating for legislation that propels the industry while furthering the economic benefits of a safe and well-regulated cannabis industry. I know that many of their members are here in our building today in the legislature, and in fact, you might be able to catch the tail end of the Changemaker Luncheon in 3100 today, and if you see them in the building, please make them feel welcome.
Senator Daley.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. Today is Deaf Day at the Legislature, a collaborative effort spearheaded by Nevada Commission for Persons Who Are Deaf and Hard of Hearing Legislative Subcommittee. So if everybody here with Deaf Day would stand up, be recognized. So, and I believe we have some in the gallery as well. So here today we have over 100 of those Nevada residents and supporters present. Supporters include, but are not limited to, Las Vegas Deaf Seniors, Nevada Association of the Deaf Communication Access Services, Nevada Telecommunications Equipment Distribution Program, Global Technical Communications, and a large range of deaf and hard of hearing children and their families from Nevada, Hands and Voices. All those present are here in an effort to educate and empower themselves as self-advocates to gain better understanding of the legislative process and those that speak towards advancement in their community needs. And before I ask you to make everybody feel welcome, I would just say if my daughter was here today, who signs, she'd have a blast. Every time she gets a chance to talk to someone with sign language, she takes advantage of it, and I know she would be sad she's missing it. So if you could please make all of them feel welcome at the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Harris.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. I'll just follow up on my colleagues' comments and also mention that It's been fantastic to see folks signing today. I hope this body keeps in mind that there are Nevadans who have trouble hearing, who watch our proceedings every day, not just on their day in the legislature. And I really hope that sometime very soon this body considers making this a permanent thing so that we can increase accessibility for every Nevadan. But on a more serious and less jovial note, this morning we lost 4 more Americans to gun violence in Louisville, Kentucky. 9 people injured. I will note that 2 of the people who were injured are police officers, one of whom had just finished the police academy 10 days ago. And there is just no level of training that's going to put you up against an AK-15, which was the weapon of choice in this particular shooting, as it is for so many of them. I hope I don't have to get up and mention this again in front of this body, but at the same time, I can guarantee you that I will. This will happen again before this legislative session is over. And while we take the time to kind of talk about these ones that are making national news, this is happening every day. I believe our latest count is 145 this year. 145 this year. And it's just going to keep going until we all decide that we've had enough. Thank you, President Pro Tem.
Thank you. Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. Today I am joined by Alexander James Harvey, known to his friends as Axel. Alexander was intern from the UNR Department of Political Science, studying under Dr. Amber Joyner, former Assemblywoman Amber Joyner, during the 2019 session, and I got to work with Axel. He graduated from UNR in 2021, and he's now about to start his master's program in political science, where he's received a scholarship, and he's going to be studying political theory. He's a native Nevadan born in Carson City, and during the 2019 session, we had some tremendous discussions on capital punishment and on equality and equity and the role of government, and just a tremendous young man, and I know he's going to do great things, and I was very lucky to get to work with him here at the legislature. He's here visiting today. Please make him feel welcome.
Thank you. Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. We had a joint hearing on Thursday on the very issues that my colleague just mentioned with the Assembly Judiciary and the Senate Judiciary. I want to start my remarks off first by praising the Senate Chair of Judiciary, our colleague from District Number 9, who did an exceptionally good job and received well-deserved accolades for her work there. However, I'm here to frankly complain about the process. We actually had a hearing on 3 bills, and you know, as legislators, one of our jobs is to hear both sides of an issue. While we all have very strong personal opinions on many of these things, our job in what we call a hearing is to actually allow both sides an opportunity to present their views. And this so-called hearing that occurred on Thursday actually was an advocacy demonstration that was masquerading as a hearing. Why do I say that? Well, very simple. I went back and actually did the math, and we discovered that the proponents of the bill had 1 hour and 45 minutes to present their side of the issue, and those of us who are in opposition had no opportunity. There was no opposition presentation allowed in the hearing. Not only that, for those of us that wanted to ask questions, we were limited to a single question, and we were not allowed to have even a follow-up. And so what we called a hearing was, in fact, a one-sided demonstration against a position that I hold as a Second Amendment right. Now, if we as legislators are going to do our job, it is very important that we make sure that in our committees, and I was a chair of that exact committee, and I always made sure that both sides, even if I didn't agree with the opposition side, had an opportunity to present fairly its views. Now, for whatever reason, we are drifting away from that. And this hearing is about as good an example as that, or a bad example, if you will, that I can think of. Hearings should be just that, a hearing, not an advocacy, not a demonstration, but an opportunity for us as legislators to make up our mind after hearing both sides of the question. Now, I will say this is my 7th legislative session. And I have, over the years, although I have very strong opinions on lots of issues, I've been privileged to hear opposition testimony and learn from people who disagree with me in many cases. And I think as a legislative body, one of our responsibilities going forward from this minute is to make sure that every single hearing we have, whether we like it or not, and whether or not it's going to be controversial or not, we make sure that everybody in the state of Nevada knows that we gave a fair and impartial opportunity for both sides to be heard in our legislative chambers. And this hearing was a sham. It did not do that. It gave an hour and 45 minutes to the opposition, and then for those of us who testified in opposition, they were granted 1 minute, and we as legislators were not allowed to even ask them a question, with one exception in the hearing. So I just want to make sure as we go forward, and these are obviously, as my colleague just pointed out, exceptionally sensitive issues. They are not cut and dried, simple things. There are a lot of very complicated portions to this beyond the emotional appeal of it. There are all sorts of reasons for the laws we have and for the Second Amendment of our Constitution, and where firearms often are used in a very positive way to actually prevent violence. So, because we spent an hour and 45 minutes discussing all the terrible things about firearms, we had a very one-sided hearing. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. We should make our opinions and our votes based on being educated in as round a way as possible in those hearings. So I just want to encourage those of you, because I'm in the minority, all right? And when I was in the majority, I made sure that your side got every opportunity to have a fair and impartial hearing before our committees. And what I saw on Thursday was a disgrace. It was not a hearing, it was an advocacy. That belonged out front where they wanted to do a demonstration and get the press there, fine and dandy. But to call that a hearing, when it absolutely was not a hearing, but one-sided presentation, and then to grant experts. I actually had Dr. John Lott, who had agreed to come here if we wanted, and who is a nationally known expert on these issues, as well as the lobbyist for the National Rifle Association. I tried to get him at least 5 minutes. But no, they were granted, like everybody else, 1 minute with no questions from the panels whatsoever. And by the way, we don't get a second bite at the apple like we normally do. That hearing was a joint hearing, and the Senate will never hear it again. And so the people like myself who want to have an opportunity to question some of these folks have been denied that opportunity. Therefore, thank goodness we still have the floor. We haven't figured out a way to shut everybody down on the floor, so at least I can advocate for my side somewhat here. But all I'm asking for in what I'm saying right now is not advocacy for my views. It's simply a fairness in the process. Everybody in the state of Nevada should know that at the Nevada Legislature, both sides will be granted an equal opportunity to present their views before those of us that are going to pass laws affecting over 3 million human beings. And that is not at all unreasonable, and it's certainly not something that we as legislators should turn away from. We should embrace that. We should gladly listen to both sides. And after that, and weighing all the evidence that's presented, then make rational judgments based on a full and impartial hearing as much as humanly possible. And with that, Madam Vice President Pro Tem, I want to thank you for that, and I want to encourage my colleagues as we go forward, especially those of you in the majority, to make sure that we do this process as fair and as equally and impartially as we reasonably can. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. Thanks for a second chance. I just want to remind everyone we're running late, and education today will meet at 2:15. Please be on time.
Thank you. Senator Buck.
Thank you so much, Madam President Pro Tem. I wanted to take a minute to introduce Tim Smalley. He is the Nevada Association of the Deaf president. He lives in Henderson, Nevada. Thank you. And I also wanted to introduce Heidi Sievers-Gansert's guest, Eric Wilcox. He's the chair of the Commission for the Persons Who Are Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and Susan Beckett. And we also have Lucy Wilcox, who is Eric's daughter. Anyway, I wanted to take a minute to thank you all so much for your advocacy for all of these wonderful people. Thank you.
Senator Scheibel.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tem. Although I do pride myself on running a timely committee, I have failed to meet my normal 1 p.m. start time today, so Senate Judiciary will begin at 2 p.m. sharp. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Seeing none, Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President Pro Tempore. I want to thank everyone who's with us today, and a special thank you to everyone who is here for Deaf Day at the Legislature, and looking forward to getting to speak with them later today. With that, Madam President Pro Tempore, I move the Senate stand in adjournment until the hour of 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 11th, 2023.
You've heard the motion. All those that agree signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay? The motion is carried. The Senate is adjourned.